Most gardeners think August is the month when the hard work is finally over. The tomatoes are producing. The cucumbers seem unstoppable. Peppers are getting bigger every week, and squash plants are taking over entire sections of the garden. From a distance, everything looks successful. But if you've been gardening for a while, you know that August can be surprisingly unforgiving. A garden that looked healthy just 2 weeks ago can suddenly slow down. Leaves begin turning yellow. Powdery mildew appears almost overnight. Tomatoes stop ripening as quickly. Cucumbers become bitter. Squash plants collapse without much warning. Insects that were barely noticeable in early summer suddenly seem to be everywhere. And many of these problems aren't caused by something that happened today. They're the result of small mistakes made over the last several weeks. The good news is that August is also one of the best months to improve your harvest. Many gardeners focus only on keeping plants alive until the end of the season. Experienced gardeners think differently. Instead of asking, "How long can I keep this plant growing?" they ask, "How can I help this plant produce its best harvest for the rest of the season?" That small change in thinking often makes a huge difference. In this video, we'll go through everything you should be doing in your vegetable garden during August. We'll talk about watering, pruning, harvesting, diseases, pests, late-season planting, and several common mistakes that quietly reduce yields every year. Some of these jobs take only a few minutes. Others can completely change how productive your garden is during the final part of summer. Let's start with the mistake that causes more unnecessary problems than almost anything else: watering. It sounds simple. After all, August is usually one of the hottest months of the year, so the obvious answer seems to be watering more, but that isn't always true. One of the biggest mistakes gardeners make is watering according to the weather instead of watering according to the soil. A few hot afternoons don't automatically mean your plants need more water. Likewise, one summer thunderstorm doesn't necessarily mean the soil is fully soaked. The surface of the soil can be misleading. Sometimes the top inch feels completely dry, while the root zone below still contains plenty of moisture. Other times, the surface looks dark after a light rain, but only a thin layer became wet, while the deeper roots remained dry. Instead of guessing, check. Push your finger several inches into the soil. If you use raised beds, you may need to check even more often, because they usually dry faster than in-ground gardens. Containers require even closer attention. Large tomato plants growing in containers can use surprising amounts of water during hot weather. But even then, watering on a fixed schedule isn't always the best solution. Healthy roots need both moisture and oxygen. When soil stays constantly saturated, roots receive less oxygen, making plants weaker instead of stronger. Many gardeners become confused when they see wilted leaves in the afternoon. The first reaction is usually to grab the hose, but temporary afternoon wilting doesn't always mean the plant is thirsty. On extremely hot days, some vegetables naturally lose water faster than their roots can replace it. By evening, many recover completely without any watering at all. If a plant still looks wilted the following morning, that's a different situation. Morning wilting deserves a closer inspection. Check the soil. Look for damaged stems. Look for insects. Examine the roots if the plant is small enough. Don't assume every wilted plant simply needs more water. August is also the time to think about how you water. If you're using a sprinkler that wets the entire garden every evening, you're creating conditions that many fungal diseases appreciate. Wet leaves that stay damp overnight can encourage problems, especially when humidity is high. Whenever practical, water near the base of the plant. Morning is often the best time, because any moisture that reaches the leaves has time to dry during the day. Another common mistake is treating every vegetable exactly the same. Your cucumbers may need more consistent moisture than your rosemary. Peppers and tomatoes growing in containers may dry much faster than plants growing directly in the ground. Instead of watering the entire garden equally, think in zones. Plants with similar water needs should ideally grow together. That makes irrigation much easier and often produces healthier plants. Now here's something many gardeners don't realize. August isn't just about watering correctly, it's also about harvesting correctly. Many vegetables actually produce more when you harvest them consistently. Cucumbers are a perfect example. If large, overripe cucumbers remain on the vine, the plant begins shifting its energy toward producing mature seeds instead of making new fruit. The result is fewer fresh cucumbers over time. The same principle applies to zucchini. Almost everyone has experienced this. One small zucchini seems to double in size overnight. A day or two later, it's enormous. While giant zucchini are impressive, leaving too many oversized fruits on the plant often slows future production. Frequent harvesting sends a different message. The plant continues trying to produce more fruit because it hasn't yet completed its reproductive cycle. Beans behave similarly. Picking beans regularly usually encourages continued flowering and pod production. Even tomatoes benefit from consistent harvesting. Ripe tomatoes left on the plant too long may crack after heavy rain, attract insects, or become damaged by birds. Harvesting regularly also reduces unnecessary weight on heavily loaded branches. Here's a simple habit that many experienced gardeners follow throughout August. Every 2 or 3 days, they walk through the entire vegetable garden with one goal: not weeding, not pruning, not fertilizing, just harvesting. That short walk often reveals problems before they become serious. You notice the cucumber that was hidden yesterday. You spot the first yellow tomato leaf. You find insect damage while it's still limited to one plant instead of 10. In other words, harvesting becomes part of your inspection routine. And that's one of the biggest differences between beginners and experienced gardeners. Beginners usually react after problems become obvious. Experienced gardeners notice small changes while they're still easy to manage. Which brings us to another August job that many people either ignore completely or do far too aggressively: pruning. Because when it comes to summer pruning, doing too much can be just as harmful as doing too little. Because when it comes to summer pruning, doing too much can be just as harmful as doing too little. By August, many gardeners suddenly become very aggressive with their pruning. They remove every yellow leaf, every sucker, and sometimes half the plant. The intention is good. They want better airflow and fewer diseases. But remember, leaves are the plant's energy factory. If you remove too many healthy leaves during one of the hottest months of the year, you can expose fruit to intense sunlight and increase the risk of sun scald. Instead of removing everything, focus on what no longer helps the plant. Start with leaves touching the soil. Remove foliage that is clearly yellow, badly diseased, or heavily damaged. Then step back and look at the whole plant. Can air move through the center? Can you easily inspect the stems? If the answer is yes, you probably don't need to prune any further. Tomato suckers create another common debate. For indeterminate tomatoes, removing a few suckers can improve airflow and keep plants easier to manage. But removing every sucker usually isn't necessary and may reduce the amount of foliage protecting the fruit. Determinate tomatoes are different. Heavy pruning can actually reduce the harvest because many future flowers develop on growth that gardeners mistakenly remove. If you're unsure which type you're growing, it's usually safer to prune conservatively. Another simple August job is checking your support system. Tomato branches become surprisingly heavy late in the season. After storms, cages lean, ties loosen, and branches may snap under the weight of ripening fruit. 5 minutes spent reinforcing supports today can save a large part of your harvest next week. Now let's talk about diseases. Many gardeners think diseases suddenly appear in August. In reality, most have been developing quietly for weeks. Plants are older, temperatures have been stressful, and symptoms finally become obvious. Powdery mildew is one of the most common examples. It often begins as small white patches on the leaves that look almost like flour. If ignored, those patches spread, leaves begin yellowing, and the plant gradually loses vigor. Improve airflow whenever possible, and remove badly infected leaves if doing so won't expose the plant excessively. If treatment becomes necessary, always choose a product labeled for both the crop and the disease. Tomatoes often develop leaf spots late in the season as well. Not every spotted leaf means disaster. Older lower leaves naturally decline over time. The important question is whether the problem stays limited or continues moving upward through the plant. That's why experienced gardeners don't inspect only the fruit. They check stems, new growth, flowers, leaf undersides, and the soil around the base. Small problems are much easier to manage before they spread. Now let's move to insects. One of the biggest mistakes gardeners make is assuming every insect should be eliminated. Many insects are actually helping your garden. Lady beetles feed on aphids. Lacewing larvae consume soft-bodied pests. Pollinators continue working throughout late summer. Instead of asking, "What should I spray?" ask, "What exactly am I looking at?" Healthy plants can tolerate small amounts of insect feeding without affecting production. Before treating anything, inspect the newest leaves, the undersides of foliage, flowers, and developing fruit. Identify the pest first. Treat only when necessary. A healthy garden isn't one without insects. It's one where beneficial insects and pests remain in balance. And with that in mind, let's move to one of the most important August jobs that many gardeners completely overlook. Preparing the garden not only for the rest of summer, but for the harvest that can continue well into fall. Preparing for what comes next instead of focusing only on what's growing today. One of the biggest differences between beginner and experienced gardeners appears every August. Beginners see the end of the season. Experienced gardeners see another opportunity. Depending on your climate, August can be the perfect time to plant a second round of fast-growing vegetables. Leaf lettuce, spinach, arugula, radishes, beets, turnips, and many Asian greens often perform even better as temperatures begin to cool. The key is knowing how much growing season you have left. Instead of asking, "Is it too late to plant?" ask, "What can still reach maturity before my first frost?" That simple question opens up many possibilities. Before planting, clear finish crops, remove weeds, and add compost if your soil needs improvement. Healthy soil will usually do more for your harvest than adding extra fertilizer. Speaking of fertilizer, this is another area where gardeners often make unnecessary mistakes. When production slows slightly in August, many people immediately add more fertilizer, but slower growth isn't always caused by a lack of nutrients. Hot weather alone can reduce flowering and fruit production. Too much nitrogen late in the season may encourage leafy growth instead of helping plants finish producing fruit. Before feeding your garden, take a moment to evaluate the whole plant. If it's healthy and still producing, patience is often the better solution. Now let's quickly look at a few popular crops. Tomatoes benefit from regular harvesting, strong support, and removing damaged fruit before it attracts pests. Cucumbers should be picked while they're still young to encourage continuous production. Check zucchini frequently because fruit can become oversized in just a couple of days. Peppers often continue producing well into fall, especially in warm climates, so harvest carefully without breaking heavy branches. Beans also reward frequent picking by continuing to flower and set new pods. Don't be afraid to remove plants that have completely finished producing. Old, diseased plants often become a source of pests and disease for the rest of the garden. At the same time, don't remove a productive plant just because it has a few yellow leaves. Look at its overall health, not one imperfect leaf. Before the season ends, there's one more habit that's worth developing. Take notes. Write down which varieties performed best. Notice where pests appeared first. Remember which beds stayed too wet or dried out too quickly. Those observations will help you make better decisions next season than any gardening book can. Finally, don't chase perfection. Every successful garden has a few damaged leaves. Every gardener loses a plant now and then. The goal isn't a picture-perfect garden. The goal is healthy plants, a productive harvest, and learning something new every season. That's why August matters so much. The small decisions you make now can determine whether your garden keeps producing for weeks or begins declining much sooner than necessary. So the next time you walk through your garden, slow down for a few minutes. Check the soil before watering. Harvest ripe vegetables regularly. Inspect leaves for early signs of disease. Support heavy branches before they snap. And if you still have space, consider planting one more crop for the weeks ahead. August isn't just the end of summer. For many vegetable gardens, it's the month that determines how successful the rest of the season will be. If you found this guide helpful, let us know in the comments which vegetable is performing best in your garden right now. And don't forget to subscribe for more practical gardening tips to help you grow healthier, more productive plants throughout the season.